The morning sun cast golden rays across Earth's newest orbital station, Unity 1. The massive structure floated in perfect silence above the blue marble of home. Inside the observation deck, 8-year-old Sarah Chen pressed her small hands against the thick glass window. Her dark eyes sparkled with wonder as she watched her planet slowly turn below. Sarah's father, Ambassador David Chen, stood behind her with a gentle smile. Today was special. After 3 years of careful communication, the Galactic Convergence had finally agreed to meet humanity face to face. The Convergence ruled over 47 different alien species across thousands of star systems. They were the most powerful force in the known galaxy. "Daddy, will the aliens look scary?" Sarah asked, her voice small and curious. David knelt beside his daughter and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Some might look different from us, sweetheart. But remember what I taught you. Different doesn't mean bad. We're all just trying to live and be happy." Sarah nodded seriously as if her father had shared the greatest wisdom in the universe. In truth, he was more nervous than he let on. This meeting would decide humanity's place among the stars. Would Earth join the great community of worlds, or would humans remain isolated and alone? The Convergence ship arrived exactly on time. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Unity 1. The alien vessel was dark purple, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shimmer and move. Sarah watched in awe as the giant ship docked with their station. Lights flashed, machines hummed, and then the airlock doors hissed open. The alien delegation walked through the doors. There were 5 of them, each from a different species. One looked like a tall bluebird. Another was covered in what looked like rocky armor. But the leader was the most striking. Commander Zekthor of the Vraxian species stood nearly 8 feet tall. His skin was deep red and his forearms moved with practiced grace. 2 small horns curved from his forehead, and his yellow eyes seemed to glow with inner fire. David stepped forward with his hand extended in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Unity 1, Commander Zekthor. We are honored by your presence. I am Ambassador David Chen, representing the people of Earth." Zekthor looked down at the offered hand but did not take it. Instead, he made a short clicking sound that the translator device rendered as, "We acknowledge your greeting, human. Let us proceed with business. The Convergence has many systems to govern. We cannot waste time on pleasantries." David slowly lowered his hand. He kept his smile, but Sarah noticed it looked a bit sadder now. The group moved to the conference room, a circular space with a large table in the center. Earth's delegation sat on one side, the aliens on the other. Sarah sat quietly beside her father, trying to be invisible and well-behaved as she had promised. The negotiations began. Earth wanted to trade resources and knowledge. The Convergence wanted access to Earth's solar system for their ships to use as a travel route. But Zekthor's terms were harsh. He demanded that Earth give up control of several asteroid mining stations. He insisted that human ships could only travel in certain areas. He spoke as if humans were children who needed to be told what to do. David remained calm and polite. He explained that Earth could not agree to give up so much for so little in return. He suggested different terms, fairer ones. But with each suggestion, Zekthor's yellow eyes grew brighter with anger. "You do not understand your position, human." Zekthor's voice rose, echoing through the room. "The Convergence offers you a gift by even speaking to you. Your species is new, weak, and insignificant. You should be grateful we allow you to exist in this part of space." Sarah felt scared by the angry alien. Without thinking, she reached out and tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now?" she whispered. It was a small sound, a tiny voice in a tense room. But Zekthor's head snapped toward her. His 4 hands slammed on the table. "Silence. The offspring should not speak when adults conduct business." David stood up immediately. "Commander, that's my daughter. She's just a child. Please, let's take a break and continue this discussion calmly." But Zekthor was beyond calm. In Vraxian culture, children were property, not people. They had no rights until they reached maturity. The idea that this small creature could interrupt important negotiations with her feelings was insulting beyond measure. "Your offspring needs discipline," Zekthor growled. Before anyone could react, one of his large hands shot out. The blow caught Sarah across the face with terrible force. The sound echoed like a thunderclap. Sarah's small body flew backward out of her chair and crashed against the wall. She crumpled to the floor, completely still. For one heartbeat, the universe stopped. No one moved. No one breathed. Then David screamed his daughter's name and rushed to her side. Medical alarms shrieked. Security personnel flooded into the room. The other human delegates stared in absolute horror. Even the other aliens in Zekthor's delegation looked uncomfortable, though they said nothing. Zekthor straightened his uniform, seemingly unconcerned. "A minor correction," he said through the translator. "In the Convergence, offspring learn respect. Perhaps now your negotiations will proceed more smoothly." Medical staff rushed Sarah to the station's hospital bay. David followed, his face pale with terror and rage. The conference room emptied quickly, leaving only the shocked silence of a moment that would change everything. Within minutes, the security footage spread across Earth's networks. Billions of humans watched the moment their ambassador's little girl was struck down by an alien commander. They saw her tiny body hit the wall. They saw her father's anguish. And they heard Zekthor's cold dismissal of what he had done. Sarah lay in a medical pod, unconscious. Doctors worked frantically. The scans showed massive trauma. Zekthor's enhanced Vraxian strength had hit her with the force of a speeding vehicle. Her skull was fractured. Her brain was swelling. She might not wake up. And even if she did, she might never be the same bright little girl who had looked at the stars with wonder just hours before. In the waiting room outside, David sat with his head in his hands. President Amara Okafor arrived within the hour, her face grave. She placed a hand on his shoulder but said nothing. What words could possibly help? On Earth, the reaction was unlike anything in human history. The footage played on every screen in every language in every city and village. Mothers held their children closer. Fathers clenched their fists. Young people gathered in the streets, their faces twisted with rage. Old veterans of long-ago wars felt the familiar cold weight of combat weapons in their memories. Humanity had always been divided by nation, culture, and belief. But in that moment, every human on Earth shared one feeling. A child had been hurt, and the one who hurt her felt no shame. It was wrong. It was unforgivable. It demanded an answer. Meanwhile, on the Convergence ship, Zekthor spoke with his homeworld. His superiors were annoyed by the incident but not angry with him. Cultural differences, they called it. They instructed him to continue negotiations. The humans would calm down eventually. They always did. Every species learned to accept the Convergence's way of doing things. That night, President Okafor called an emergency meeting with Earth's military leaders. Admiral Marcus Webb, commander of Earth's defense forces, sat at the head of the table. His gray hair and weathered face spoke of decades of service. His eyes, usually warm and kind, now burned with cold fury. "Mr. President," he said quietly, "every warship we have is ready. Every soldier is requesting deployment. Every citizen is asking what we're going to do. I need to know. What are your orders?" President Okafor looked at the faces around the table. She saw the same expression on each one: determination, purpose, and something darker, something that had not been seen on Earth for a generation, the willingness to do violence to protect their own, to show the universe that humans were not prey. "Contact the Convergence," she said finally. "Tell them we demand Commander Zekthor be turned over to Earth authorities immediately to stand trial for assault on a child. They have 24 hours to comply. And if they refuse?" Admiral Webb asked, though he already knew the answer. President Okafor's jaw tightened. "Then we show them why you never ever hurt a human child." The message went out within the hour. The Convergence received Earth's demand and responded with laughter. Zekthor would not be handed over. He had done nothing wrong by their laws. The negotiations could continue, but only if Earth stopped this emotional overreaction. In the hospital, Sarah remained unconscious, machines keeping her alive. David never left her side. He held her small hand and whispered stories to her, praying she could somehow hear him. But his tears were not tears of helplessness anymore. They were tears of promise. Someone would answer for this. Someone would pay. Across Earth, something ancient awakened. Humanity had spent centuries trying to leave behind its violent past. Wars had become rare. Peace had become normal. But beneath that civilized surface, the old instincts remained. The instinct to protect the weak. The instinct to punish those who harmed the innocent. The instinct that had once made humans the apex predators of their world. The Convergence had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had crushed dozens of rebellions. They believed themselves invincible. but they had never faced humanity. The 24 hours passed like a slow death. In the hospital on Unity 1, Sarah Chen remained in her medical pod, lost in dark dreams. Machines breathed for her. Medicine flowed through her veins. Her father sat beside her, his eyes red from crying but his jaw set with steel determination. He had stopped begging the doctors for good news. Now he simply waited and watched the clock. On Earth, the whole planet held its breath. Every news channel showed a countdown timer. 23 hours, 20 hours, 15 hours. People stopped working. Schools closed. Families gathered in their homes, glued to their screens. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the time ran out. The Convergence sent their response 12 hours before the deadline. It came not as a message of apology or negotiation, but as a declaration. Commander Zekthor would not be surrendered. The incident was closed. Furthermore, the Convergence was offended by Earth's aggressive demands. Unless humanity apologized and accepted the original harsh trade terms, there would be consequences. President Amara Okafor read the message in her office. Admiral Marcus Webb stood beside her, his arms crossed over his chest. Around them, Earth's top military and political leaders waited for her decision. "They think we're bluffing," she said quietly. "They've never met humans before," Admiral Webb replied. "They don't know what we're capable of. They judge us by our size, our single planet, our short time in space. They think we're children playing at being adults." President Okafor turned to her military advisor. "Tell me about our readiness, everything, no sugarcoating." Admiral Webb pulled up a holographic display. Blue lights showed Earth's forces spreading across the solar system. "Every combat vessel is in position. Every weapon system is armed. We have recall orders out for all civilian ships. Colonial stations are being evacuated. Everyone not essential to military operations is heading home." He manipulated the display, showing layers of defenses around Earth. "We have 300 warships in close orbit. Another 200 stationed at strategic points throughout the system. Hidden weapon platforms on asteroids, moons, and in deep space. The Helios Protocol is ready." "The Helios Protocol," President Okafor repeated. "Explain it to everyone here." Admiral Webb's expression was grim. "For the past 50 years, we've been building massive solar collectors in orbit around the sun. Officially, they generate power for Earth and the colonies. That's true, but it's not their only function. Each collector can redirect and focus solar energy into a concentrated beam. Individually, each beam could melt a small asteroid. Together, they can create a weapon more powerful than anything the galaxy has seen." Someone at the table whispered a prayer. Another asked, "Have we ever tested it at full power?" "Simulations only," Webb admitted. "We built it hoping we'd never need to use it. But the math is solid. It will work." President Okafor studied the display for a long moment. Then she brought up intelligence reports. "What do we know about Convergence military capabilities?" Another officer spoke up. "They're powerful, Mr. President. They have thousands of warships spread across their empire. Their weapons are proven in combat. They've never lost a major conflict. But their technology is old. They haven't faced a serious threat in centuries, so they haven't innovated much. They rely on overwhelming numbers and intimidation." "And our technology?" President Okafor asked. Admiral Webb allowed himself a thin smile. "Cutting edge. We've developed weapon systems they don't know about. FTL missiles that can hit targets across star systems. Nanite swarms that can disassemble enemy ships molecule by molecule. Singularity bombs that create temporary black holes. We built them all in secret, hoping for peace but preparing for war." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, the president spoke again. "Send out the message. Tell every human in the solar system what's coming. Tell them to prepare. Tell them why we're doing this." The broadcast went out 6 hours before the deadline. President Okafor's face appeared on every screen across human space. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. "People of Earth and all human colonies, you have seen what happened to Sarah Chen. You have seen an innocent child struck down by someone who feels no remorse. The Galactic Convergence has refused to deliver justice. They have told us to accept this brutality as normal. They have threatened us with consequences if we do not submit to their demands." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I will not accept this. We will not accept this. Humanity has spent centuries building a civilization based on protecting the innocent. We have laws against harming children for a reason. It is the most fundamental rule of any decent society. The convergence has shown they do not share this value. Therefore, we will teach them. In 6 hours, our ultimatum expires. If Commander Zekthor is not surrendered for trial, we will respond with force. This is not a threat. It is a promise. To any aliens watching this broadcast, understand this. Humanity does not make war lightly. But when we do, we make it absolutely. Stay out of our way. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, other species who had been monitoring Earth's situation shifted nervously. Some sent quiet messages of support, though none dared openly oppose the convergence. Others simply recalled their ships from human space and waited to see what would happen. On the Convergence High Council's homeworld, the leaders gathered to discuss the situation. They sat in a massive chamber that had witnessed thousands of years of decisions. Holographic representatives of different species debated the issue. Some argued for giving Earth what it wanted. They are emotional creatures. Give them their justice and they will calm down. But others, including Zekthor himself, stood firm. We cannot show weakness. If we surrender one of our commanders to these primitives, every species in the convergence will think they can challenge us. We must respond with overwhelming force. Send the punishment fleet. The council voted. The hardliners won. Within hours, 50 convergence warships began moving toward Earth. They were meant to be a show of force, a demonstration that would make humanity back down. After all, Earth only had a few hundred ships. The convergence had thousands. This would be a quick lesson, they thought. The humans would see the fleet, realize their mistake, and surrender. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The final hours ticked away. Admiral Webb stood in Earth's military command center, watching holographic displays that showed the positions of every ship, every weapon, every asset humanity possessed. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations. The room hummed with quiet efficiency. No one spoke unnecessarily. Everyone knew their role. Status of Helios protocol? He asked. All collectors aligned and charged, sir. Ready to fire on your command. FTL missiles, programmed and locked on Convergence fleet approach vectors. Ready to launch. Nanite swarms, deployed and dormant, waiting for activation signal. Admiral Webb nodded slowly. He had been a soldier for 40 years. He had seen combat, had lost friends, had made the hard decisions that kept people safe. But this was different. This was not a border skirmish or a police action. This was the beginning of something that could change humanity forever. Once they crossed this line, there was no going back. His communicator buzzed. President Okafor's face appeared. Admiral, it's time. What's your final recommendation? Webb looked at the timer. 3 minutes remaining. Mr. President, the Convergence fleet will arrive in our outer system in approximately 4 hours. They're coming to intimidate us. They expect us to surrender. I recommend we show them exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity. Rules of engagement? Total destruction of all hostile forces. No survivors to report back except one. We let one ship escape to tell their masters what happened here. The message needs to be clear. President Okafor was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've been thinking about Sarah, about what her father said to her before all this happened. That different doesn't mean bad. That we're all just trying to live and be happy. It's still true, Admiral, but we also need to be able to protect those we love. If that makes us the monsters in someone else's story, so be it. Yes, Mr. President. You have authorization to engage. Show them what happens when you hurt our children. The timer hit 0. Admiral Webb took a deep breath and turned to his command staff. All stations, this is Admiral Webb. Execute Defense Protocol Omega. Authorization code Shepard. I repeat, Shepard. Protect the flock at all costs. Across human space, warships received the order. Weapon systems came online. Soldiers climbed into fighters. Marines loaded their weapons. Scientists activated experimental technology. And, deep in the sun's corona, the Helios collectors began to glow with gathered energy. The Convergence punishment fleet crossed into Earth's solar system 4 hours later. Their commanders were confident. 50 warships against a few hundred human vessels, easy odds. They broadcast their demands. Earth must surrender immediately. President Okafor must resign. All human military forces must disarm. And the human who called himself ambassador must publicly apologize for wasting the Convergence's time. The response they received was not words. It was weapons fire. Every hidden platform in the outer system opened up at once. FTL missiles materialized in the middle of the Convergence fleet and detonated before anyone could react. The news of the Punishment Fleet's destruction spread through the Convergence like wildfire, in council chambers, military command centers, and civilian streets across hundreds of worlds. Beings watched the footage in disbelief. The mighty Convergence, rulers of the galaxy, had been humiliated by a single species from one small planet. On the Convergence homeworld, the High Council convened in emergency session. The massive chamber that usually echoed with confident declarations now filled with nervous whispers and angry arguments. Holographic representatives of 47 species flickered around the circular table, each displaying different reactions to the crisis. The Vraxian representative, speaking for Zekthor's species, slammed his four fists on the table. "This is an outrage. These humans destroyed our ships without provocation. We must mobilize the full might of the Convergence. 10,000 warships. We will turn their planet to ash." But a Quilori delegate, her blue feathers ruffling with agitation, spoke up. "Without provocation? Commander Zekthor struck a child. I have seen the footage. The human offspring did nothing threatening. This was pure brutality. Perhaps if we simply hand over Zekthor, this conflict ends." "Impossible," the Vraxian roared. "We do not surrender our commanders to primitives. It would show weakness. Every species under our rule would see it and think they could challenge us too." An elder Thraxian, one of the founding members of the Convergence, spoke with the weight of centuries. "Perhaps we should reconsider what weakness truly is. We sent 50 ships to intimidate them. All 49 are destroyed. Only one survived to tell the tale. The humans planned this. They have weapons we knew nothing about. They are not primitives. They are dangerous." The debate raged for hours. Finally, the High Commander of the Convergence military stood to speak. His name was Vral, and he had led armies for 60 years. His species, the Korthan, were natural warriors, and he had never lost a campaign. "Honored Council," Vral began, his voice deep and commanding, "I have studied the human attack. Their tactics were flawless. Their technology is beyond what our intelligence predicted. But they made one mistake. They let a ship escape. That tells me they want us to know what they can do. They are trying to intimidate us just as we tried to intimidate them." He manipulated a holographic display, showing the solar system and the wreckage of the Punishment Fleet. "They have powerful weapons, yes. But they are limited. They fought from prepared positions using hidden assets. If we attack them in their home system, we will face their full strength. But the galaxy is vast. We have forces everywhere. I propose Operation Broken Pride." The council leaned forward, listening. "We gather our armada, not 50 ships, but 10,000. We approach Earth slowly, giving them time to see the size of our fleet. They will realize they cannot win and will surrender. If they do not, we have enough ships to overwhelm even their advanced weapons. Numbers will win this war." The vote was close, but the hardliners won again. The order went out across Convergence space. Every available warship was to converge on the human solar system. It would take time to gather such a force, but once assembled, it would be unstoppable. Or so they believed. On Earth, Admiral Webb received the intelligence reports. Human spy satellites and hacked communications told him everything he needed to know. The Convergence was mobilizing its entire military. 10,000 ships from across the galaxy were heading toward Earth. He stood in the command center, surrounded by his staff. The holographic display showed red dots converging from all directions. It looked like a tidal wave of death approaching their small blue world. "Sir," one of his officers said quietly, "even with all our weapons, those numbers are impossible. We can't fight 10,000 ships." Admiral Webb was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, though it was not a kind smile. "They're making the same mistake as before. They think this is about defending Earth. They think we'll sit here and wait for them to come to us. They don't understand humans at all." He turned to his staff. "Get me President Okafor, and pull up Operation Broken Crown." Operation Broken Crown. It was Earth's most classified military plan, created decades ago by strategists who had studied humanity's history of warfare. The plan was based on a simple principle that every human general from ancient times had understood. The best defense is a good offense. When President Okafor joined the call, Admiral Webb laid out his proposal. "Mr. President, they're gathering their fleet. It will take them weeks to fully assemble. During that time, their empire will be vulnerable. Their warships will be in transit, leaving their worlds poorly defended. I propose we don't wait for them to attack us. We attack them first. We hit them everywhere at once. The President studied the battle plan spreading across her screen. Admiral, this plan calls for striking 200 convergence worlds simultaneously. That's not a military operation. That's total war. Yes, sir, it is. But if we succeed, we break their empire. We show every species under convergence rule that their masters are not invincible. Some will surrender. Others will rebel. The convergence will collapse from within while we destroy their military from without. And Sarah? Commander Zekthor? Once we've shown them the cost of refusing justice, they'll give him up. And if they don't, we'll take him by force. President Okafor closed her eyes. This was the moment. Once she gave this order, millions would die. Soldiers on both sides. Maybe civilians too, despite their best efforts to avoid them. The weight of those lives pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. But she thought of Sarah, lying unconscious in her hospital bed. She thought of every human child who would grow up in a galaxy where hurting them had no consequences. And she made her choice. Do it. Execute Operation Broken Crown. What followed would be remembered as the 72 Hours of Fire. Earth's military forces, divided into strike groups, began emerging from FTL jumps throughout convergent space. They appeared without warning, struck with overwhelming force, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Strike Group Alpha hit a major military shipyard in the Vorton system. FTL missiles destroyed the defensive satellites in the first minute. Nanite swarms disabled the orbital defense platforms in the second minute. By the third minute, human warships were in position, raining fire down on the shipyard itself. 30 new convergence warships still under construction were destroyed before they ever saw battle. The human ships jumped away before the system's fleet could respond. Strike Group Theta targeted a convergence command center on the Quelm homeworld. They didn't destroy the facility. Instead, they hacked into its systems and broadcasted a message to every convergence world. The message showed the footage of Sarah being struck. It showed Zekthor's dismissal of his crime. It showed the convergence's refusal to accept responsibility. And it ended with a simple statement. This is why we fight. Justice for the innocent. Strike Group Gamma found a convergence fortress world protected by massive planetary shields. Normal weapons would have taken weeks to break through. The humans deployed their singularity bombs. The temporary black holes they created didn't break the shields. They ate them. Within hours, the fortress was defenseless and human marines were landing to secure the military installations. The attacks continued without pause. 200 strikes across 200 worlds in 72 hours. The convergence military scrambled to respond, but they were caught completely off guard. Their forces were scattered, moving toward Earth, leaving their own territory vulnerable. They had never imagined humans would attack them. They had assumed Earth would defend its home and nothing more. Meanwhile, back at Earth, the Convergence Armada was finally assembling. 10,000 warships gathered at the edge of the solar system, preparing for their attack. High Commander Vral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the displays with growing concern. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire. Attacks everywhere, massive losses, civilian panic. Some species were openly questioning the Convergence's authority. How is this possible? He demanded. They're attacking us in 200 places at once. How many ships do they have? His intelligence officer looked terrified. Sir, our estimates were completely wrong. They don't have hundreds of ships. They have thousands. They must have been building them in secret for decades, and their FTL technology is faster than ours. They can strike and escape before we can respond. Vral felt ice forming in his chest. This was not the war he had expected. Recall the fleet. We need to defend our worlds. But before he could give the order, alarm shrieked across his ship. The human fleet, supposedly trapped on Earth, was jumping into the system. Not to Earth's defense, but to attack. Admiral Webb had led his forces out to meet the Convergence Armada, but not for a defensive battle. He was going on offense. The two fleets clashed in the space between Jupiter and Saturn. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, 10,000 convergence ships against 3,000 human vessels. The numbers favored the convergence, but numbers were not everything. Human ships were smaller, faster, and far more advanced. They coordinated with machine precision, every vessel working as part of a greater whole. Their weapons struck from impossible distances. Their shields absorbed damage that should have destroyed them. The war entered its third month, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity fought with a precision and ferocity that defied belief. Every day brought new reports of convergence defeats. Worlds liberated, fleets destroyed, supply lines cut. The empire that had ruled for thousands of years was crumbling like sandcastles before the tide. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in Earth's command center, his face gaunt from weeks without proper rest. The holographic display before him showed the entire galaxy, color-coded by control, red for convergence territory, blue for human-controlled space, and an ever-growing sea of green for worlds that had declared independence. "Status report," he commanded. His operations officer pulled up the latest intelligence. "Sir, 17 more worlds have declared independence from the convergence. That brings the total to 43. The Quilori have officially joined our side, providing intelligence on convergence fleet movements. The Thraxians are negotiating surrender terms. The Corthan military is in complete disarray after we destroyed their main training facility last week. And Zekthor, still with the Convergence High Council on their capital world. They're using him as a symbol of resistance, refusing to surrender him even as their empire collapses around them." Admiral Webb studied the map. The Convergence capital world, Thraxis Prime, sat deep in what remained of their territory. It was heavily fortified, protected by their last major fleet. Getting to Zekthor would require a direct assault on the most defended location in the galaxy. "Prepare Strike Group Omega," he said. "We're going after him ourselves." Before the attack could be planned, a message arrived from an unexpected source. High Commander Vral, the Convergence military leader who had retreated from Earth, requested a private communication with Admiral Webb. The human commander accepted, curious what his enemy might want. Vral's hologram appeared in Webb's office. The Corthan warrior looked tired, his armor dented from battle, his eyes heavy with the weight of defeat. "Admiral Webb," Vral began, "I am contacting you against the orders of my High Council. I have served the Convergence for 60 years. I believed in our mission to bring order to the galaxy, but I have watched my people die by the thousands in this war. I have seen worlds burn, and for what? Because one commander struck a child and our leaders were too proud to admit it was wrong." Webb remained silent, letting the alien speak. "I am a soldier, not a politician. I follow orders. But there is a difference between following orders and following madness. The High Council still believes they can win. They plan to make a final stand at Thraxis Prime. They will sacrifice what remains of our fleet in a battle they cannot win, all to protect Zekthor's pride and their own." Vral pulled up tactical data and transmitted it to Webb. "Here are the complete defense plans for Thraxis Prime. Every weapons platform, every fleet position, every shield frequency. If you attack with this knowledge, you will break through with minimal losses. I give you this because I am tired of watching good soldiers die for a lost cause." "Why?" Admiral Webb asked. "Why betray your own people?" "I am not betraying them. I am trying to save what remains. Every day this war continues, more of my people die. More worlds are destroyed. The convergence is finished, Admiral, but the species that made it up could still have a future, if they survive to see it. End this quickly. Take Zekthor. Force our surrender. Then perhaps we can all start rebuilding." The transmission ended. Admiral Webb stared at the data Vral had provided. It was genuine, his analysts confirmed. With this intelligence, they could take Thraxis Prime. The war could end within days. He called President Okafor. "We have a path to victory. We can end this now. But it will require a massive assault on their capital world. There will be significant casualties on both sides, even with our advantage." President Okafor looked older than she had 3 months ago. The weight of leading humanity through its first galactic war had aged her. "How is Sarah?" "She woke up yesterday," Webb replied softly. "The doctors say she'll recover physically. But the trauma, the psychological damage, will take years to heal. Her father says she has nightmares every time she closes her eyes." "Then finish it, Admiral. Bring that monster back to face justice. Not for revenge, but so Sarah can see that the galaxy has rules. That even the powerful must answer for their crimes." Operation Final Justice launched 3 days later. 5,000 human warships emerged from FTL around Thraxis Prime. The Convergence defenders, expecting a protracted siege, were shocked by the speed and precision of the assault. Human forces knew exactly where to strike. Shield generators fell in the first hour. Orbital platforms were neutralized in the second. By the third hour, human marines were landing on the planet's surface. The High Council building stood in the planet's capital city, a massive structure that had witnessed millennia of decisions. Now it was surrounded by human forces. Admiral Webb himself led the assault team, determined to see this through personally. They breached the building with careful precision, avoiding civilian casualties wherever possible. The council members were found in their chamber, awaiting the inevitable. Some looked defiant. Others simply looked tired. And among them stood Commander Zekthor, his red skin seeming darker in the emergency lighting, his forearms crossed over his chest. "Commander Zekthor," Admiral Webb said, his voice hard as iron, "you are under arrest for assault on a child. You will be transported to Earth to stand trial for your crimes." Zekthor laughed, a bitter sound. "All of this for one small creature? You destroyed an empire, killed millions, reshaped the galaxy, all because I disciplined an offspring. Your species is insane." Admiral Webb stepped closer, and despite Zekthor's greater height, the human seemed to loom over the alien. "No, we reshaped the galaxy because when we demanded justice, you refused. When we asked for basic decency, you sent warships. You thought we were weak because we value the lives of children. You learned the truth too late. Our compassion for the innocent is not weakness. It is the source of our greatest strength. Because a species that will not protect its children does not deserve to exist." Human soldiers moved forward and placed restraints on Zekthor. He did not resist. Perhaps he finally understood that his arrogance had cost him everything. Or perhaps he was simply too tired to fight anymore. The head of the High Council, an ancient Thraxian who had led the convergence for 2 centuries, spoke up. "What are your terms for our surrender?" Admiral Webb transmitted a document. "President Okafor has authorized me to present these terms. The galactic convergence is hereby dissolved. Each member species regains full sovereignty over their own worlds. All offensive military fleets will be dismantled. A new governing body, the Galactic Assembly, will be formed with equal representation for all species, and universal rights protecting all sentient beings, especially children, will be established and enforced." "And if we refuse?" the Thraxian asked, though his voice held no real defiance. "We will continue this war until there is nothing left of your civilization but memories and ruins. But I hope you choose peace. Humanity does not want to be conquerors. We never asked for this war. We only wanted justice for a child. Give us that. Help us build something better, and we can all move forward together." The council debated for 3 hours, but in the end they had no real choice. The convergence formally surrendered. Zekthor was transported to Earth in a maximum security ship, and throughout the galaxy, beings watched in amazement as the most powerful empire in history officially ended its existence. The trial of Commander Zekthor was broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. It was held on Earth in the International Court of Justice that had once only handled human matters. Now it would set a precedent for the entire galaxy. Zekthor stood in the defendant's box, his forearms shackled, his proud bearing finally broken. The evidence was presented. The video of him striking Sarah, medical reports of her injuries, expert testimony on Vraxian's strength and how he must have known the force he was using, and most damning of all, his own words after the assault, dismissing what he had done as minor correction. His defense argued cultural differences. In Vraxian society, children had no rights until maturity. How could he be guilty of a crime that was not a crime in his culture? The prosecution's response was simple. This assault did not take place on a Vraxian world. It took place on a human station under human jurisdiction. More importantly, there are some values that transcend culture. The protection of children is one of them. Every species represented in this court has laws against harming the young. Some values are universal, written not in law books but in the very essence of what it means to be a thinking, feeling being. The jury, composed of humans and aliens alike, deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty of assault on a child. The sentence was life imprisonment, to be served on a special facility where Zekthor would live out his days in isolation. Forced to contemplate the consequences of his actions, Sarah Chen attended the trial with her father. She sat in the front row, a small figure in a large courtroom, and watched as the being who had hurt her was led away in chains. David held her hand throughout, and when the verdict was read, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. 10 years had passed since the war that reshaped the galaxy, The scars still remained, but new growth had begun. Where the convergence had once ruled with an iron fist, the Galactic Assembly now governed with consensus and cooperation. Representatives from 112 species met regularly on neutral stations, debating laws and policies that affected them all. It was messy, often frustrating, and sometimes maddeningly slow. But it was democratic, and it was fair. Admiral Marcus Webb, now retired, stood in his garden on Earth. His hair had gone completely white, and his face bore the lines of someone who had carried great responsibility, but his eyes were peaceful. He tended to his roses, finding comfort in the simple act of nurturing life after spending so long dealing in death. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from the Galactic Assembly. Sarah Chen would be addressing them today, the first human to do so since President Okafor had announced the formation of the Assembly a decade ago. Webb smiled. He had been invited to attend, but he preferred to watch from home. This was Sarah's moment, not his. On Assembly Station Alpha, the massive chamber filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Beings of every shape, size, and color took their seats. Once these species had been subjects of the convergence, forbidden from speaking freely. Now they were equals, each with a voice in how the galaxy was governed. Sarah Chen walked to the central podium. She was 18 now, no longer the frightened child who had been struck down on Unity 1. She wore the simple uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, her dark hair pulled back, her posture confident. But if you looked closely, you could see the scar on her temple where Zekthor's blow had landed. It had faded with time, but it would never completely disappear. The chamber fell silent as she prepared to speak. Every being present knew her story. She was famous across the galaxy, though she had never sought that fame. She was the child whose suffering had sparked a revolution, the symbol of why the old order had fallen and the new one had risen. Honored delegates, Sarah began, her voice steady and clear. My name is Sarah Chen. Most of you know what happened to me 10 years ago. You have seen the videos. You know the story. But I want to tell you what you have not seen.
I want to tell you about the years after. She took a breath, gathering her thoughts.
When I woke up in the hospital, I did not understand what had happened. I was 8 years old. I knew my face hurt. I knew my father was crying, but I did not know that a war had started because of me. When I learned the truth, when I understood how many beings had died, I felt crushed by guilt. How could I live knowing that millions had died over what happened to me? The chamber was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My father told me something then that I will never forget. He said that the war was not about me. It was about a principle, about whether the powerful could harm the weak without consequences, about whether justice meant anything in the universe or if it was just empty words. The war happened because when humanity demanded justice, the convergence chose violence instead. Every being who died because someone chose pride over peace. Sarah looked around the chamber, making eye contact with different delegates, but that does not make it hurt less. I have spent 10 years in therapy, learning to cope with what happened. I have nightmares still. I flinch when someone raises their voice. I will carry these scars, visible and invisible, for the rest of my life. And I know that the families of those who died in the war carry their own scars too. She paused, letting her words sink in. So why am I here? Why did I agree to speak to you today? Because I want you to understand something important. The pain I suffered and the war that followed were terrible. But from that darkness came light. The Galactic Assembly exists because beings looked at what happened to me and said, never again. Not to any child. Not to any innocent. Not anywhere in the galaxy. Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing statistics. In the 10 years since the Assembly was formed, violent crime across member worlds has dropped by 42%. Child abuse cases have fallen by 67%. Why? Because we established universal laws protecting the vulnerable. Because we created enforcement systems that actually work. Because for the first time in galactic history, every species agreed on one basic principle. Some behaviors are wrong everywhere, no matter your culture or tradition. A Vraxian delegate stood up. Sarah recognized his species immediately, and for a moment old fear flickered in her chest. But she steadied herself. Ambassador Chen, the Vraxian said, his voice humble. My species bears great shame for what our commander did to you. Many of us have children now, raised under the Assembly's laws. We teach them that all life is precious. We teach them that strength means protecting the weak, not harming them. But I must ask, can you ever forgive what was done to you? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Every camera in the chamber focused on her face. Finally, she spoke. I forgive the Vraxian people. You did not strike me. One individual did. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Zekthor sits in a prison cell because he committed a crime. That sentence stands as a reminder that actions have consequences. Justice was served. And from that justice, your people have changed. You raise your children differently now. That change, that growth, that is what matters. The Vraxian delegate bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. He sat down and Sarah continued her speech. I come before you today not just as Sarah Chen survivor. I come as humanity's youngest ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. My father held this position before me until he retired last year. Now it is my turn to serve. And my message to you all is simple. The peace we have built is fragile. It was born from terrible violence. Millions died to create it. We cannot let their sacrifice be for nothing. She changed the holographic display, showing problems that still plagued the galaxy. We still have work to do. There are species who refuse to join the assembly. There are worlds where children suffer in silence. There are beings who think the old ways were better, who long for the days when might made right. We cannot become complacent. We must remain vigilant. But we must also remember what we learned. Humanity went to war because we value compassion. We fought because we believe in protecting the innocent. But war itself is a failure of compassion. It should always be the last resort, never the first response. In the years ahead, I hope we can solve our differences through dialogue, compromise, and mutual understanding. Because peace, real lasting peace, is not built on the ashes of enemies. It is built on the foundation of friendship. Sarah finished her speech to thunderous applause. Beings from dozens of species stood and cheered. It was not just for her words, but for what she represented. Hope, healing. The possibility that even the worst trauma could be overcome and transformed into something meaningful. After the session ended, Sarah walked through the station's observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly before her, millions of points of light representing billions of lives. Once she had looked at stars with simple wonder. Then she had learned to fear what might exist among them. But now, after years of healing and growth, she could look at them with hope again. Her father found her there. David Chen had aged gracefully, his hair gray but his eyes still sharp. He stood beside his daughter in comfortable silence, both of them watching the stars. You did well today, he said finally. Did I? I feel like I barely scratched the surface of what needed to be said. That's good. It means you understand the complexity of what we are trying to build. Easy answers are usually wrong answers. The real work is in navigating the difficult middle ground. Sarah leaned against the window. Do you think it was worth it, Dad? All those deaths, all that destruction. Was justice for one child worth the price we paid? David considered the question carefully. The war was not just about you, Sarah. It was about what kind of galaxy we wanted to live in. The convergence ruled through fear and might. They believed the strong had the right to dominate the weak. Humanity said no. We said that civilization requires protecting the vulnerable. That justice must apply to everyone, not just the powerful. He turned to face his daughter. Could we have done it differently? Maybe. Probably. We will spend generations debating whether we could have achieved this change with less bloodshed. But I do know this, the galaxy is better now than it was. Children are safer. Rights are protected. Every species has a voice. That is worth something. Whether it was worth the price we paid, history will judge. Sarah nodded slowly. I visit the memorial sometimes. The one that lists all the names. Humans and aliens, soldiers and civilians. Everyone who died in the war. It takes hours just to walk past all the names. Each one was a person with hopes and dreams and people who loved them. I carry that weight every day. Good, David said softly. Never forget that weight. It will keep you honest. It will make you think twice before supporting violence. But do not let it crush you either. You are not responsible for their deaths. The beings who chose violence over justice are responsible. You were just a child who asked her father if they could go home. They stood together in silence for a while longer. Then Sarah said, I am going to visit him tomorrow. David did not need to ask who she meant. Are you sure you're ready for that?